Welcome back to the Pro Series Podcast, episode 258. Today I'm welcoming back Shane Drake, who originally joined me last year on episode 196. Shane is an award-winning director who has directed music videos for Carrie Underwood, Tim McGraw, Riley Green, Panic at the Disco, and so much more. But this time we're talking about something completely different. Shane is back with his new 5-part documentary series, Shane Drake Presents Before the World Paused, an intimate fly-on-the-wall look at the music industry just before COVID changed everything. Shot entirely on his iPhone, Shane captured artists on tour, backstage, in green rooms, on buses, planes, ferries, everywhere in between. It's a raw snapshot of the music industry at the moment of none of us actually get to see. In this episode, we talk all about that project. We get a little glimpse of his directing life and kind of give an update from last year. But if you are a music lover, if you enjoy just looking more into the industry, this is for you. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review the Pro Series Podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 258 with Shane Drake. Shane, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I can't wait to catch up with you. You were on last year and wanted to get caught up on what you're doing now.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back, man. Thanks for the invite. It's been an interesting year, the film industry has been on a teetering sort of brink of major change, for good or bad. I don't know yet. You know what I mean? Obviously there's a couple people making hundreds of thousands, if not millions and gazillions of dollars. And then there's a ton of people who used to have regular steady work who are unemployed.
Yeah.
And so you've got a bit of a crisis there. So, I've been fortunate. I've got some, sort of long-standing clients that have afforded me some, commercial work here and there and some music videos that I get to write on here and there. But, in the sort of stillness of my time, I try to write, I try to fill it with new projects. But one of the things that I did this last few months was resurrect a dead project. And that's kind of what I've been putting a lot of my attention into the last few weeks and month, really.
How long has this been dead?
Well, so we shot this series back in 2019, and it was actually, we had shot a film called Rising Star for this artist named Griffin House. And it was we shot the whole thing in a course of like 20 days, edited it, released it on Prime, and it eventually got picked up and now it's on Tubi. But that was a really fun experience. My producer was kind of just a music lover. He loved Griffin House and loved the process. He was like, what can we do to expand this idea? And so I was like, well, we could turn this into a series and do it with multiple artists and see if we could make it something that, carries on. And so he loved that idea. I loved the idea. And so we got together and started sort of brainstorming artists that we wanted to shoot and get this format. Now, obviously, Rising Star was an hour and a half feature-length doc, but these were meant to be like 30 to 60 minute sort of episodics. And so we wouldn't need to be on the road as long as I was with Griffin for each one, but they'd still be a significant, load for each one. So we chose an hour format, and all the episodes roughly are about 50 minutes. And then we just, had to go about finding the artists, and that was one of the things that was fun, because my whole career I've been working with multiple genres and different, artists of different caliber, sort of success levels. And so for this, we really wanted people that are either going up or not coming down, because that sounds pejorative, but like that we're at a plateau at a level where like, cool, everyone's kind of at the same level, but maybe at a different sort of point in that career for their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, a couple of the artists we have are very established and have been doing, a lot of work for, 15 years, others, were brand new at the time. And so, I really had the only artist we really originally knew we wanted to do that I was one of the first people I approached was the Midnight. My buddy Jesse Malloy, who also played saxophone for Panic at the Disco, and that's how we kind of became friends. We were both going to Mosaic in LA at the time. became friends there at that church. And then I found out we had this connection through Panic, that I had done the videos and he was playing sax for them at the time. And then we became close friends, formed like a Bible study together with some other dudes. And we just became friends. And he was just talking about this tour that he'd gone on for the Midnight. And he played me the music and I was just floored. I mean, it's synthwave, retro wave. It's that whole 80s throwback to that neon, just cool, vibey thing, you know? And so in this band, was doing it so perfectly. They're just like, their songs are just so infectious and they're emotional. I was like, man, I would love not only to shoot this band, but to shoot the tour where my buddy Jesse's playing sax for them. So that I approached them. I approached their manager, actually. Jesse got me in contact with their manager, and they were pretty immediately interested, curious what the hell I was talking about and what that meant and what it entailed and what they'd have to like do. Because again, you know, when a band's on tour, like it's a day in, day out job. It's like 24 hours of like, cool, this is the system, and maybe it's the same thing every day, but it's a lot every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Load in, it's, you know, it's sound check, it's go eat, it's come back, it's play the show, it's get showered up, it's get in the bus, it's head to the next place 8-10 hours away, and then do it all again. And so, you know, another trick and sort of another, not trick, but another sort of hurdle in this was getting the artist to sort of understand that for the most part, this wouldn't add to their plate. This wouldn't add. And again, it was always going to add something, but nothing that would be so detrimental that it would tax their show or tax their energy for what they actually needed to be earning money doing on the road. And so, again, my whole pitch was that I just want to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that I needed covered was transportation. And this will play into one of the episodes, but basically, you know, a lot of these bands are at the level of touring on bus.
Yeah.
And when we did Griffin House, we toured via Sprinter van and stayed in hotels and Airbnbs. And so the idea was that we would do one of those things for each of these bands, that it would be some mix of that. And if it was Airbnbs and hotels, we would cover that. But ideally, if the band was traveling by bus, we wanted to be on the bus with them. And by we, I mean me and an assistant. I had a girlfriend at the time that came on to shoot a second iPhone for some of the footage. And so that the thing was that we just wanted to be able to be on the bus with them so that we didn't have to hire cars and work out like locations and figure it just that was the one sort of ask that we put. And so for the Midnight, you know, they had a bus and they had 2 free slots for the section of tour that we were going to go on. So they were the first to sign on. The next person we signed on, this is actually the person that ended up being the first artist we shot, because again, not only did we have to find an artist that we wanted to work with, we had to find an artist that had a touring schedule that lined up with when we wanted to shoot our show.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to make it all happen within that sort of fall of 2019. Okay. And so the first artist that we actually had close connection to was Greg Laswell. And Greg was kind of from this similar scene that Griffin House was, the hotel cafe scene, and the I don't know why this camera is doing the center stage thing, but I can't seem to turn it off. So there's that, and then that's
gotta love technology.
Gonna keep doing it anyway. So if you get zooms on this, it's unintentional. So basically, like, you know, we went to Greg and said, you know, we've done this thing with Griffin and we want to do something similar with you. But again, Greg's music is different. Greg is largely a piano player and keyboards and a very sort of moody, cinematic, you know, spatial music in that sense. And so we really wanted to capture that. And we really wanted to get shooting. We started pitching this probably late summer, and his tour was happening in September. And so he was the first person we got sort of the full agreement to, like, hey, we're going to come on the road with you, with Greg, because him and my producer were already friends. In the same way that my producer was already friends with Griffin House, they were already friends. So getting communication through to him and having that conversation was a lot easier to facilitate. And so that's why we booked him first. But also his tour was just earliest in the fall. And so that's who we went out with first. And that was us in two Sprinter vans, much like Griffin House, and then staying at Airbnbs and hotels.
How
And
many
so,
dates did you go out on with each artist?
so each artist was roughly 2 weeks of dates. So whether
Okay.
that ended up being 5 shows or 8 shows, it depended on what the tour was. I wanted at least 5 concert shows. I wanted at least 5 live opportunities to shoot, and then I wanted enough. I wanted at least one off day with them that I could actually get interviews, that I could walk them around the towns that we were in, and that they would have that free time. Because when they have an off day, it's a kind of a big ask because that's the one day they get to like chill out, you know what I mean, and relax. And so I'm taking that from them, but it's even more of an ask to take their precious time on a show day.
Yeah.
So on a show day, I'm following them around with my camera, and again, we were just filming on an iPhone, so it's just me with an iPhone on a gimbal, and I'm just following them around whatever town they're in, and capturing what kind of B-roll that makes sense to me as being engaging and worth watching. And then and then we'd shoot the 5 shows or more if we got an opportunity. So with Greg, gosh, we started in Ann Arbor, went to New York, Boston, Connecticut, then back down to DC and Philly, and then over and ended it in St. Louis, Missouri,
Okay.
at the old Rock House. And St. Louis is where my producer is from, so it kind of was convenient to end there. And so that was the shows we got there. But with each tour was so uniquely different. I mean, with Greg, we each had 2 Sprinter vans, and so it felt very much like a road trip with a bunch of buddies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and because John, my producer, and Greg had such a past already, like they knew each other. My producer's wife was a big fan and friend of Greg, so there was already a bit of a camaraderie there. And one of the backup musicians for Greg's band was also a friend of my producers that they brought on. So that was, that was also just because it was the first episode. It was a lot of us working out the kinks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so figuring out like, what is my process? You know what I mean? So like, when do I get to download footage? When do I offload? Because I'm shooting on a phone, which means at the time I'm not shooting onto a hard drive. So at some point I've got to take all the footage off my phone, put it on my computer, and then go shoot again. Right. And I've got to do that with 2 phones. And I've got to make sure that in the process of pulling, the size video files off of the phone onto the computer, especially in 2019, was so slow.
hard.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
the lightning cable connection is just such a slow transfer speed that it really slow. I mean, it's hours. You know what I mean? 'Cause we're shooting gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs, filling up terabyte, hard drives. Because it's a documentary, I'm shooting everything. I don't know what's going to make the cut. I'm basically kind of like forming a big ball of ice, and then once I get home, I have to chisel it away and find out where the sculpture is. You know what I mean? So, that is this sort of trip where we sort of figure out, okay, so after I shoot the shows, I got to come back right away that night. I got to start offloading, whether the show's over at 11 p.m., 12 p.m., whenever, I've got to start offloading right away so that I can then clear those drives on the phones and then start shooting right when I wake up in the morning. So when I get up in the morning, I want to shoot whatever new town we're in. I want to shoot load in. I want to shoot, I want to get some, B-roll of the guys grabbing breakfast or a cup of coffee. And so I've got to be ready immediately. And so on top of that, we're also dealing with, remember, I'm shooting on a gimbal, and we're using Rode Go mics, which are these just little clip-on wireless things that are just, makeshift lavalier mics, but they're very visible. And so I have to make sure that those are constantly charged. The gimbal's constantly charged. My phone's constantly charged, and there's enough storage on my phone to get the footage. So it's finding the rhythm of when those charging cycles happens. So that at some point I have like a blackout period where I can't film, and then I go back and I'm able to. But we found out that rhythm on Greg and on that shoot, and really, I had another shooter helping me on that named Charisse. And again, my sort of system is, I'm kind of a camera, and it's me and my iPhone, and I'm just kind of seeing the magic. I've got a good handle on how to use the gimbal. I know I've got good sort of camera movements, and but then the second person, I never know what their skill level is going to be, and so I don't my goal with them is usually to find a stationary place, and that second camera usually only shoots for live shows. I do all the B-roll, everything outside of the show. I do just one camera. But then when it comes to the show, because I need to cut away from something,
Yeah.
I need a second camera. And so I'll basically put that second camera somewhere where they can be at a very basic sort of wide shot of the whole stage, where they can go between wide, mediums, and tights of a very master type set shot. So oftentimes I'd put them next to the board, the soundboard. And then they would just stand there, kind of like a tripod, and then, shoot from their iPhone. And then, I said, as you see the moment, feel free to go in for a tight or a medium, but we're not trying to pan with you, or we're not trying to do any kind of tricky moves. It's really just trying to be steady and really just, get in there. Now, another thing with the iPhone, another sort of limitation is that you can only, if you shoot too long a takes, because again, at the time we were using Filmic Pro. Now most people use Blackmagic app. But Filmic Pro was the main sort of pro video app you used on an iPhone to shoot this sort of high-res footage. If you shoot for longer than 8-9 minutes, sometimes, more often than not, it'll eventually cut you off because it's afraid you're going to run out of space. It's not prepared to shoot that long a takes. And so you really only have 4 to 8 minutes of like safety. So basically, I also needed to make sure that second camera person knew, all right, after each song, stop recording, record a new file. And again, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, because eventually I also have to sync all this. I have to sync her takes with my takes. And so again, like getting us as close to it as possible, getting as close to the same sync breaks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Between each song was also nuts. So you see, like, all of a sudden, like a very simple sounding thing has countless factors and variables that are all weighing in on how good this thing may or may not be. You know what I mean?
So when you went to record all this in 2019, did you go and edit it all and get it ready to release? And then maybe did COVID happen? You're like, we'll put this on the shelf.
Yeah. So the goal was always that I was going to edit. I love to edit. I was first, before I was ever a director, I was an editor. So I had a mentor named Darren Doan, and I used to edit every video, all of his punk rock videos. And I loved it because, editing is very much like directing. You're very much like sculpting a scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a director, you're doing it in the moment on set with a camera and with a crew, but as an editor, you're doing it in the bay with the footage. You still have the same talent. You've got to put next to the right talent. You've got the right sort. Then you've got to sort of mix in music where it makes sense. You've got to like find shots that match up between two cameras. You've got to make sure that everything is copacetic and it all somehow tells a story. So editing really is the best foray into directing because it really teaches you how to put puzzle pieces together correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so yes, and answer your question, yeah, the goal, the objective was always going to be that I sort of one man band this, and edit them all as well. And that all happened, so we shot Greg first, then we shot Tessa Violet, and then we shot The Midnight, and then I shot Charlie Crockett New Year's Eve, 2019 into 2020. And we're hearing the news about COVID. We're not making anything of it because no one could possibly have known it was anything real worthy of paying attention to. And then March, on top of all this, by the way, my dad's dying.
Oh my gosh. And
he's dying of COPD. It's been coming for years, and now it's finally coming to the last few months. And so between January and March, I'm home every other week to my parents because my dad's dying. Right. I'm editing these in hopes of getting them done by summer.
Yeah.
COVID hits in March, shuts the world down. My dad dies March 5th. The world gets shut down 2 weeks later. And the whole landscape of everything we planned just changes.
Yeah. My gosh.
And I think I'm not alone in that. A lot of people had that in their,
Yeah.
um, and so for me, the edit, having this work to do for those months where I'm grieving the loss of my dad, I'm like everyone trying to figure out what's going on with the world and if this is the end. I had this work to keep me busy. I had like at the time we had 4 episodes that we had shot and that we had countless footage and hours of puzzle pieces to put together. And so for me, I got the luxury of having my mind occupied with that. So for months, I was just in my edit, morning
Dang.
to night, just in it. And I wasn't dreading it. It wasn't labor intensive. It was just such a welcome thing to do in this time where the world literally paused.
Mm-hmm.
But I had all this work to do, and it was awesome. So the edit really, I mean, as a result, really, I think the edit's one of the stronger parts of this docu-series because I got to spend so much time on it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? On all the episodes, and it was, oddly enough, in Greg Glaswell's episode, he was in that tour that we captured one of his songs called Supermoon that he plays was a song about his dad who had recently died. And so he was grieving his dad, and his episode really became about that.
Yeah.
While I then was watching my dad die and editing that piece. It was wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So when you were going to edit this during COVID, were you planning on releasing it at the end of 2020, or did you have a date?
The goal was to get them edited as soon as possible and then start getting contracts with the artists and get the licensing rights, which we thought was going to be simple. We thought we'd sort of pre-negotiated all that in a way that was going to be easy to just, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's.
Okay.
But when we got to that place, even though everyone was very happy with their episode, everyone was very pleased with the product that we made. It was, there were forces bigger than the band that the
Mm,
band couldn't really dictate. The bands couldn't all dictate. We finished contracts with a couple of them, but not all of them, because there were just bigger forces at play with publishing rights and sync rights and co-writers and co-producers and all the entanglement of licensing this music, which I'm sure for a lot of people for whom this is their job, very simple, run of the mill, not a problem. We could have done this in a matter of a few weeks. For me and my producer, it was like, trying to speak a foreign language and never having trained a day in it. And so we eventually threw up our hands. And that's
mm.
why these ended up sitting on a hard drive for so long. We just couldn't get those contracts finalized. And so there was nothing we could do. We couldn't release them. And so it wasn't until now, years later, that, you know, YouTube has gotten to a place where now if you put some other artist's work on your site, it flags it,
Yeah.
copyright issue, but it doesn't take it down, and it doesn't like warrant a red flag like, oh, you can't post this. Now what it does is it funnels any copyright money directly to the publishing owner of that content. So if there's 7 songs in an episode that have publishing issues, I no longer have to worry about who all gets that money. YouTube does that.
Oh, okay.
But here's the caveat. So when we came up with this project together, me and my producer was a guy named John Lynch, and he's like a music lover. He supports the arts. He supports a lot of different artists, actually, in financially and just through support. He's just a music aficionado, and he always has been, and he always will be. He agreed to front the money for this project, so he paid my fees. He paid all our traveling fees. He paid our lodging, our food. He paid everything for me to make these episodes and not have the band have to foot a dollar. So all the band ever had to provide me was a bus ride, right?
Okay.
If that's how they were traveling from town to town. And so other than that, they didn't have to pay for anything. So this was going to be free publicity. So the goal was that we would make these, we would front the money for these. And then that in turn would you would agree that at the end, we're going to get these music licenses, and then you are going to be a partner with us in the profits, which again was all on the up and up, and everyone liked the contract and everyone agreed to that. But like I say, when it came time to secure those rights, the music rights, again, outside of the band's purview of what they could or couldn't control. You know what I mean? We couldn't solve that, and we didn't have the resources or the know-how to get that done in a timely fashion and in a way that didn't suck out all the money and profits anyway. So it's like how do we recoup our money on this, still keep the bands happy and still keep the labels happy and still keep management feeling like we're not trying to screw anybody. It just became, again, a bigger problem a problem so big we just couldn't solve it.
Yeah.
And so now, 6-7 years later, John is now taking a loss on these, right? Took a bath on it. And, he's gracious. I love John, and he doesn't hold that against me or have any kind of, harbor any kind of ill will, but it is the brass tacks is he lost that money. It was a sizable amount of money.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, he's eaten that all as a loss, but for us, for me and him, just as guys that created this cool thing, we're still like, but what do we do with this? There's still these cool episodes that are sitting on hard drives doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so, I proposed to John a few months ago. I'm like, John, why don't we just put them out on YouTube? Let's just get exposure out there. Let's let people see what we did. You know what I mean? I don't anticipate millions of views. I don't anticipate any kind of, and obviously any money that came through it won't even go to you to pay you back for the money you put in. It's going to go directly to the artist now. You know what I mean? And there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is put these out here as a proof of concept. So let's say in the future, maybe, who knows, maybe we want to do this again. And maybe this is like something that another artist says, wow, hey, I like that. How do I get that for me? Well, now John and I have a proven model that we can show the results. We know the financials of what it takes to do that, and and what it would take contractually now for us to make that profitable and viable for everyone involved. And so, that's kind of where it sits now. It's a free to watch YouTube series with the opportunity for proof of concept for future work. For John and I, if we choose to pursue a path here, and if not, it's kind of like, it was so heavy having such cool content out there, such cool pieces of work that I put a lot of my time and effort and emotions into, and having them just be seen by nobody.
Oh yeah.
It's just devastating. So it's been a real load off to have them finally out.
Yeah. While watching that first one this afternoon, I was thinking the whole time exactly what you just said. Like, it's a whole new sector of content for music. Like when music videos came out, and then they had the behind the scenes of the music video that came out after it. And then tours, it's no new thing that there's a tour documentary. It's been there for years, but the way you recorded it was kind of like the behind the scenes of the music video combined with the docu-series.
Yes.
And it allows the artist to have their tour live on for longer than the 6 months they have, and not just release a docu-series of the concert itself. It has the behind the scenes, it has the day of the life. And I think that's what fans are missing from those docu-series.
I agree. And that was what we wanted to provide when we first came up with it. That was what kind of gave us, because we got so much out of it. Like, the fans are going to love us. And the bands that we chose have such fanatic followings. I mean, the Midnight, which is that first episode, which is that synthwave band, their fans are rabid. I mean, they love them. They're all, because they're part of a genre that is very, very niche, but man, they're diehard. And so you go to their shows and their fans, and they're not like out of control ballistic. They're just so emotionally attuned and engaged fanatic that you can't help but step into the live performance and feel overwhelmed by emotion. Like when I'm on stage with them, or when I'm in the pit and I'm moving with the crowd, you aren't feeling annoyed, you aren't feeling sweaty, you're feeling like a sense of community, and you're feeling this just overwhelming, just nostalgic sense of being. And
Hmm.
it's like it's over. It really is overwhelming, and that's one of the things I think that people really respond to is that we captured that on an iPhone
Yeah.
for the live show, but then captured the artists, who they are as people. Who's behind this emotional movement? Well, when you get to hear about them and you hear from them, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Mm.
This guy clearly is tapped into the veins of human emotion. Like, of course, he's going to write songs, and he's going to collaborate with equally talented and emotionally driven producer who just have their finger on the pulse of this. Of course, that's going to translate into music that is this vibe and this aesthetic and this direction. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the cool thing is you get to, you wouldn't see that in a music video. You usually go,
Mm.
oh, cool music video. Of course, they made something rad. Or you listen to the album. Oh, the album's great. Or you, like you say, you go to one of their shows. Cool, I experienced the show, but like everyone wants, what do they talk about when they get off their 100th show at the Roundhouse in London? And that's what it was. Our culminating show for them was their 100th show with this
Wow.
hugely famous, popular venue in London. I mean, we're talking Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, like The Doors, like an iconic place. What happens when they go back to the green room? Well, watch this documentary because you'll see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what's rad is like you get to go behind the scenes. You get to see them, the jitters before, like what are these artists doing like 10 minutes before the show? Watch the
Yeah.
documentary and you'll see.
Yeah, and that's what interests people nowadays. I mean, like, you look at any TV show now, Idol has it, Dancing with the Stars has it. They have that podcast that talks about the episodes
Yes.
because
And that's as big
pe
as the show.
yeah, people wanna know the behind the scenes stuff. They wanna know what people were feeling before they went on the stage and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and
The
that's
show about the show is just as important as the show now.
exactly. Yeah, and even with artists, obviously I love country music, so I see and I follow all these photographers, and Jeff Johnson comes to my mind. He's done Carrie, now he's doing Megan Maroney. I love seeing that side of it, like the production side of that
Yeah,
we don't see, and people just want more of like the behind the scenes stuff.
absolutely. I mean, and that was what's cool. So when we got to do so the next artist was Tessa Violet, who is kind of a newcomer in the music scene, but she was a massive YouTube star.
Oh,
Years, I
okay.
think her name was Mere Kitty or something. I forget what her YouTube tag, but she was one of the first gigantic YouTube sensations.
Oh,
Um, and so she translated that into a music career that had that same kind of rabid fan base, but hers were so it's not really a hippie movement, but it was just this. There's such a again, I come back to the word community because again, with Tessa Violet's fans, they are such a loving communal bunch that are there for the greater good of the whole movement, And so it's like you go to their shows, and again, we were in Europe for that, and we went, from Zurich to Paris to Berlin to Amsterdam, and then we ended up in Warsaw, Poland.
yeah,
And the fans, it didn't matter which country we were in, the fans were almost exactly the same because the music and her messaging hits a certain heartstring. And you see how she has pulled out the people that connect to that in every town. And seeing that connection was very eye-opening for me because again, like as a director, I get to travel a lot and I get to go, but I'm shooting different artists in different settings with different genres, different motivations, but to just be with the one artist and be with them for a set period of time where I can go with them to different places and see their impact on different cities and to see that, oh, you attract a certain fan and you have cultivated that on purpose. And you've done it so well that your shows are packed, they're sold out with this group of lovely people every time. And so that was very cool, And then obviously when I had been a fan of Charlie Crockett's for probably a good year before this show idea came around, and nobody heard of him. Every time I'd show him to someone, people were like, I don't get it because he's such a throwback. He's so retro that it's almost like he came through a time machine and he's not retro at all. He's just the real thing.
yeah,
And that's how I see him. And that's how I experienced his music. And so I was myself a very rabid fan of his. And I kind of just got the idea when we were sort of coming through. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to try and shoot Charlie Crockett. Because to me, I didn't even sure if he was gettable because he was not big. He was not popular. He wasn't like this big thing. But because he was so important to me, or I was such a fan, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if he'll be gettable, you know. But I went through his label at the time and his management, and we were able to get him. And you know, it was that to me is one of those real snapshots because Charlie had not broken wide, and he a number of times in the while we were shooting, he'd just be like, "I just don't understand why you're shooting me." You know, it's
Oh,
because
yeah.
man, it's because I see you and I get you and I believe in what you're doing. You know, and sure enough, here 6 years later, the guy's been nominated for Grammys. He's been on major label. He's since left a major label. He's had controversy. He's been the public eye of all kinds of country discussions on multiple genres of country sort of, discussion boards and Reddit threads. And he's a hot topic now. And, now he plays these really huge rooms that were, nothing like what we toured in, when I was on the road with him. And, and I'm not even sure how he tours though, because when I toured with him, we were touring on a bus that he bought himself. So it was like this old bus that he purchased. And I don't know if he still uses that bus. I would imagine he doesn't. I imagine he flies a lot of places now. But that being said, like to see that change that happened, while this episode with Charlie was sitting in the closet on a hard drive, his career was just booming. You know what I mean?
My gosh.
But man, filming that guy, but he's the kind of guy you want the stories from. And so I got as many stories as I could because when you watch that doc, you can't believe you're watching a real guy who's got lineage to Davy Crockett. Talks about that. You know what I mean? He's came up sort of like as a drifter. He rode trains. And even when you watch the documentary, he talks about how the times when he was riding trains. He doesn't hype it. He's not trying to like put on a show for you. He's not trying to like build up this cool thing that he did. As a matter of fact, he says, we probably shouldn't talk about this because folks that do this don't like to be outed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's this moment where he really does he gets very real. Like, hey, I can tell you some stuff, but I can't tell you everything because that's not really the code that we live by. If the guy, because he's just a genuine article, because he very easily could have told me all the horror stories, all the cool moments, how you do it, what's the easiest, best way to catch a train and go, but he didn't. You know what I mean? Because those are the things that get sensationalized. But when he gets to those moments, he pulls back and says, "Yeah, these things I need to keep these private. You get to know this stuff," and I so just appreciated and I just thought that was so admirable, But again, as a fan, you're never going to see that.
No.
But you watch this documentary, and I kept those parts edited in so you could see him shutting down things that would be sensationalized, and then giving you a bit of the story, enough to get you, enticed. But then let's move on.
Yeah. What I got from, those sit downs that you had and you were talking to, or they're talking to the camera and kind of giving their stories, I got a sense of kind of like shot like kind of like The Office in a way that it's not produced, but it's just the person talking to the camera, like they're actually talking to the fan. There are some docuseries out there where the artist is talking, but you could tell it's a staged, like a production. And it's the same way that you filmed it from the audience view. Like you watch these and they look like they're shot for a movie or shot for a TV show. Not that that's not bad, but you don't get that sense of you're actually viewing the show. You're viewing the movie of the show.
Yes. And I think, The Office is a funny reference. Because the idea is The Office is supposed to feel unscripted, right?
Yeah.
So this behind the scenes, like it isn't scripted. Like a lot of those big docs, there are bullet points. They come in, cool. We need to hit this point, this point, this point, this point. So just kind of like go over these and we'll come back and we just know that that's sort of what we're going to be hitting. So you're prepared with some stories. You're prepared with some anecdotes. This is what we'll be hitting. No one in my doc got that.
Okay.
Right? When I sit down or we're standing on a street corner, I pull them into a coffee shop. Some of them, you can barely hear them because I'm trying to capture audio live off a phone or a Rode mic in a working coffee shop in Manchester. Well, yeah, the audio sucks in there, but this is the vibe I want. This is where he wants to get his coffee. This is where I'm going to shoot him.
Yeah.
And scenes fill in the windows, and well, that's what we're going to do. And so you get the sense like, okay, well, turn the volume up, turn those closed captions on, because this is the real deal. This wasn't sculpted, this wasn't scripted, and this wasn't like blocked. Like, we just sat down at this table and now we're talking.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I wasn't intentional about wanting things to look a certain way, because I was. But I think there's things that you can do aesthetically, with a camera and with just the way you ask the questions, that sort of bring out an essence and bring out a style and a direction without having to force it into a script.
Yeah. Is
So,
that why you wanted to shoot it with an iPhone? Was that the main reason?
well, okay, so the reason I shot, well, originally, we shot Rising Star because when we shot Rising Star, that movie about Griffin House, we debated all the different camera systems to use. And again, we wanted to be mobile and agile and have as few crew as possible to keep the budget low. And I was like, cool, even if I just bring just like a Canon 5D type situation, I still have to charge batteries. Mm. I still have to lug a pretty big camera bag around. And when that gets put on a gimbal, it looks much more substantial. So people are probably going to stop and stare and look a little bit. I probably have to bring at least one extra person to help me just with grabbing stuff, bringing stuff, tracking cards and all that stuff. I'm like, you know what? I told John, I was like, John, the iPhone is in an amazing place right now where it can shoot such high resolution photo. Let's just do that. And he was like, cool. He didn't bat an eye. He's like, that sounds awesome. And plus, it's kind of gimmicky to shoot on an iPhone. There's a cool sort of, cachet to saying, yeah, we shot this on an iPhone. You know what I mean? And so that's also part of it. But I think, when it came to this, more so than just having our sort of past production shoot that way, this one, we were actually going to go to much bigger stages. With Griffin House, the stages were, city wineries mostly. Whereas, or at least venues that size. With these shows, I mean, we were going to be shooting the Roundhouse. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we were going to be shooting Washington's and Fort Collins. We were going to be shooting all over the world at venues that were far more substantial and have rules about cameras on stage. And we're not going to allow a camera on stage. And there were at least 4 or 5 venues throughout the series with all the different artists where I would not have been allowed on the stage if I was shooting anything other than on an iPhone. Because as soon as you tell them, no, we're just on an iPhone. It's just one guy. There's another iPhone in the back in the crowd, not in anyone's way. And I'm completely autonomous up here. There's no crew. There's no gear. It's just me and an iPhone. As soon as you say that to a venue, they're like, oh, okay, that sounds like nothing. And it is nothing. But for me, what's happening through that lens, and what they don't understand is that what's happening through that lens is as magnificent as if I was shooting a Red camera or an Arri. Like, it has different compression. Yes, the footage I get is more compressed than those cameras. And yes, I don't have the same aperture because the phone is fixed. But for the most part, for 90% of what most people are looking at and processing, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's enough for me. That was enough for me to go, you know what? I'm going to get big, massive shots on here, and I can go wherever the hell I want because I can tell the venue that I'm shooting an iPhone.
Dang.
And so it got us access to places we should not have had access to.
That's funny.
And when we're walking around like, Berlin, or we're walking around Antwerp, or wherever, like, and I've got a little gimbal with a little iPhone, people aren't stopping thinking I'm making some major motion picture. They don't think I'm making a big Martin Scorsese documentary about the Rolling Stones. They think I'm filming a friend for TikTok.
Yeah, just a tourist.
Or whatever was big in 2019. Do you know what I mean? They don't stop. And so cops don't stop me. No one's asking for permits. No one's asking for all the details that slow you down.
Yeah.
So it became, to me, an iPhone is the perfect tool for indie filmmaking, and obviously major directors have used it for properly, scripted feature films. But I think in the documentary space, it's particularly useful.
Oh
you know.
yeah.
And and to get to our last artist, once we'd shot these first four artists and then COVID hit, we were kind of like, crap, is this it? Like, now we've got our show's just going to be 4 episodes. We'd always wanted 5 episodes. We originally wanted Martin Sexton for our other episode. He's got kind of a long sort of pedigree of music, of just having great shows and great fans, and just has this sort of iconic sort of history. But he had to, we had him for a minute, and then he had to pull out last minute. And so we ended up not having that fifth slot. And then when COVID hit, I was editing these, and I was like, what would be awesome is to shoot an episode in the middle of this chaos. I'm like, how great would that be? I mean, I'm not sure the logistics of how I'm going to do it, because right now they won't let you sneeze in public without getting arrested. So let me just. And so I basically was like, I called John, like, John, I think I want to do our fifth episode. I think I want to do it during COVID. I've got this buddy, Jez Dior, who I've known for years, and I've always been a fan of his music, but always been a friend first. And I hit him up and said, Jez, like, we're doing this documentary. We're following these artists. Obviously, you're not going to be touring right now. Nobody's touring. There's no tours to shoot. But, I know you've got a new album coming out. I know you're in the studio. Would you want to be part of this? And we'll focus on the studio instead of the tour.
I
And he
like
was
that.
like, hell yeah. And Jez is my dude. I mean, I knew he was going to say yes, but again, Jez had just left a major label. He was just signed to a major, and we had actually together shot in 2 really dope music videos for him in like 2017. And then he ended up leaving that label, was not happy. And now he was doing this whole new independent album, and it was perfect timing because during COVID, he was, finishing up his thing. But again, COVID kind of screwed him too. And so he wanted an opportunity to tell his story about how COVID and how the whole thing had sort of jacked him up. And so it was perfect timing for him to want his story told. And so John agreed to let me do that. And so we filmed him in his home. He lived in the Valley at the time, and not far from where I was. And so we filmed him at his house and in his home studio, and then a couple studios, Sound Factory, and a couple others around LA. And then he was going to do a trip to San Francisco to surprise his sister for her birthday. And then he was doing a trip to Tulum, Mexico, where his dad lived. Now, Jez's dad has quite a history in the punk rock scene. He was friends with the New York Dolls. He was friends with Sid Vicious, and he played with these guys, and he had this sort of rock and roll history, but he also was coming from this world of addiction and this world of really intense rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so Jez had a kind of a sordid history with his dad. So I'm like, this is perfect. So this episode, we get to sort of see what your life looks like in COVID. We get to go see San Francisco that was just decimated at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all the cities were. And then we got to go to Tulum and leave the country to another country and experience that in its COVID sort of situation, which was entirely unique. And then we ended up sort of, bonding or connecting the dots between Jez's music career and his dad's career, which are so just sort of tragically and beautifully tied. And so that just made for a great episode. And also we just got to shoot the hell out of Mexico, which was just beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
We stayed at this resort called Xcaret, and it was it's where there's ruins and there's these temples and there's, our hotel room back, like our literally back patio of our hotel room, you jump off into a lagoon. Like it just was crazy. And so we filmed, there's like waterfalls everywhere. So we filmed some of the most beautiful footage for that episode. And I was so excited because, it was Jez had a message he wanted to get out in that, and I wanted to help him. And I also wanted to fit that episode to this. But unfortunately, like I said, once we came time to get all this contracted and done and it didn't come through, that was one of the hard parts for me, was that Jez was a personal friend, and it sucks for me and it sucks for him knowing that these aren't going to get released. And, over the years, I'd potentially had a few people that were going to buy the episodes and then they didn't. Um, and every time I'd kind of mentioned it to the artist and they'd get excited and then I'd have to let them know, nope, it fell through. It's not
Mm.
happening. And with Jazz, it was particularly painful just because I know like, it was such a personal story that he was telling in this one. And to have it shelved just kind of sucks. And so he's been one of the real excited parties with this new release, getting to have this out in the open and finally having everyone see that side of what, happened in his trajectory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like you have two, like you gave birth to two new content pieces, like the side that's going to show the creative process of the stuff that management and labels should probably want to fund themselves because it's probably going to sell more records.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then the touring side is going to show the entertainment, the artistry side of it all.
Yeah.
So I
And
mean,
again, like, I hope so. And
yeah,
that's why we're releasing them, right? So I'm hoping that there's someone watches this, someone goes, yeah, what a great idea. Let's do that. Let's not make another music video. Let's
yeah,
do that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, music videos are still something I love doing myself, so I hope they never die, but they're changing. You know what I mean? Like you see way more artists on Instagram Reels or TikTok, whatever, shooting themselves with a static one shot for 30 seconds, just singing in one background, and then that's it. And that's their video. That
yeah,
gets more play than anything they're going to go spend $20,000, $30,000 on. So why that? So most of them don't do that anymore. Why would you? When you just go post yourself up in a garage or an alley or some kind of crazy cliff, and you and your band or you and your one other like partner in the band like sing your song and lip sync it yourself, and there it is on TikTok for 30 seconds. It's getting 50,000 views. Why would you go spend more money when you can do that for free?
yeah. I mean, even the industry is changing. Like MTV is, where it's
Yeah,
at now.
yeah,
CMT, same. Everything that has to do with music videos and like the high production value of that stuff is kind of gone. But social media has taken, like what you said, that just the 30 seconds of the song, or they do the full song and they're just doing a crazy normal video.
yes,
It relates more to the fan.
yeah. And I think that and I'm not a hater. I really do. I get it. Like media changes. Like
Yeah,
it always has. It's evolved since the first picture we sort of sent around one of those little I forget the very first movie that was just a picture, a series of pictures that came around went around a circle. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, we've evolved from this mechanical single frame turning into, oh, this is a 24 frame situation. Oh, this is a movie. Oh, this is a video. Oh, this is interlaced video. Oh, this is de-interlaced. Oh, this is progressive video. Oh, now we're in HD video. Oh, now we're in 4K video. Oh, now we're in 816K video. And now it's like, so while the medium's progressing, the devices and the tools we have to enjoy that is changing. And so of course it's all gonna evolve. So to expect music videos or anything, even movies, to be today what they were 20, 30 years ago is to not understand how the world works. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And so, but it is interesting though, because at 51, I'm still I've got to figure out where things are going. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so for me, the hope is that I can still be innovative enough that I'm ahead of at least one of the curves somewhere
yeah,
to catch it before it goes away. And this is just one of those areas. And if it's not, I'm just glad that these are out there, and I'm glad that people get to enjoy them now. Fans and new fans, people that maybe never would have heard these artists without this, you know, these episodes out there. They can go check them out and see who they are.
yeah. I mean, YouTube's such a huge platform now, and people watch podcasts on YouTube, and it's just the new television. It's a new
For
cable for
sure.
everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and I'm assuming this show lives on there, right?
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. Even on the podcast platforms. And one more point I wanted to bring up: being a music fan, there's albums that if you're a diehard fan of someone and an album comes out and they do these late night talk show interviews and they're not really about the music. They're like really
Right.
about like, yeah, maybe they went away and got a couple of cool songwriters and they'll talk about those stories, but they don't talk about the meaning behind the songs and the process behind them.
Yeah.
So I feel like from a marketing standpoint, that would make the album sell more or more people relate to the album. instead of just releasing it and going on like a late night talk show, just talking about their past
Right.
year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what people are doing though, right? Like even you look at a podcast like Smartless, which I love it, but like those famous people aren't getting on they'll talk about craft and they'll talk about motivation for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The rest of it's anecdotes. The rest of it's like, do you do Pilates? Do you,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Are you part of this new diet fad? What do you think about this stupid thing? Like, and it's like, oh, it's making people like everyone else. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
when it comes to music, I think the more I think that, and that's what's happening with videos. They're the same thing where we're humanizing celebrities, right? So we think they're accessible, whatever. And so like now everything on TikTok and everything in video consumption feels sort of not dumbed down, but simple. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's not a lot of production value and a lot of bells and whistles. It's very simple, straightforward, because it's humanizing it, right?
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to any of these things, like that's the goal, right? And so that was the goal with these episodes. You know, I want them, the artists, to feel approachable, even if they aren't. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not my job to make them approachable or not approachable. But if I can make you watch something for an hour, they are approachable. Well, then that's more approachable than you were going to get before the show.
Exactly. Well, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them. The first one was so good, and I imagine each one of them's a little bit different, and because they're different artists, but
Yeah.
and also the way that you shot them. But looking forward to it. I want to finish where people could watch them all, where they could follow you on social media, all of that.
Yeah. I mean, the best place is my YouTube. It's just Shane Drake. And you know, the series is called Shane Drake Presents Before the World Paused. Um, and yeah, I mean, right now I'm just trying to. I've never really spent time building a YouTube, so I'm welcoming new subscribers and welcoming, you know, the likes and the views. But really, I'm just wanting. I love the dialogue. I love the people that are commenting, and I comment back because it's not like there's a million people on there. Like I'm, it's easy for me to like, heart, and then write back to people that have questions. Like, and I love that. That's what I love about Reddit as well. You know, I'm on there as well, and you know, just being able to respond to people that are like, oh, how'd you do this? How did you get this access? Or how is this even possible? It's like, oh, believe me, it's possible. And here's how I did it. And you can do it too, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, all my handles are you know, slash Shane Drake or at Shane Drake. So, Instagram is where I do a lot of my sort of Instagram and Facebook's where I do a lot of my updates for what's happening with the shows. But again, I do YouTube shorts too. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
Shane, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. Can't wait to get this one out.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. Appreciate being here. And yeah, we'll see you soon.